Hello everyone and welcome to the Franchise Show. I hope you're all doing well. And this is the show, and I'm going to do it, where we get under the hat of some of the most important topics in franchising. And it's a live show. Well, it's live if it's about 5:15 for around 50 minutes on April 22nd. So if you are here, please drop in a comment, say hello, and get involved in our conversations. So what do? Each week, we take a new topic to do with the world of franchising. And we have some lovely guests. And this week is no exception to that. We have two wonderful guests. This week's topic is the franchise prospect journey. And to talk about that, we have the lovely Susie McCafferty and Neil Newman. Susie, Neil, welcome to the Franchise Show.
Thank you for having me again.
Yeah, thanks, Harvey.
You're both very welcome. Perhaps we can start things off. I mean, most people are going to know both of you, but it's always a good way to start things off if you could just do a little introduction. So we'll go ladies first. Susie, if you could just do a little introduction to yourself, that would be wonderful.
Oh, thank you. So I'm Susie McCafferty, founder of Platinum Wave Franchising. We are one of the UK's British Franchise Association accredited franchise consultancy firms. Bit of a mouthful there. So we basically help franchises and brands grow through the vehicle of franchising, not just here, but internationally. And we help put all the systems and procedures in place to scale up the business through franchising. We recruit franchisees, we help build stronger networks. And as I say, we take brands international as well.
Fantastic. Lovely introduction. Thank you so much for that, Susie. And Neil, perhaps you again can give a little introduction. Most people will know Neil as you're one of our wonderful supporters. But if you could give a little introduction to yourself and how you've got into the world of franchising.
Thanks, Harvey. Yeah, we're quite new to franchising ourselves as a company. I am the founder of Gather. We've been going 7 years. Previous to that, 25 years as an operations director. I think Gather is an essential piece of the missing puzzle for operations. That's why we brought it to market. And we've come recently into franchising because obviously it's essential that the franchisor has good oversight of all their franchisees, and even the franchisees have oversight of their empires as well. So I hope to add something to the conversation today. I think I'm going to take Susie's lead on a lot of this, but I'll try and add some interesting and helpful information as we go.
Fantastic. Thanks very much for that, Neil. I think before we say hello to a few people who have already joined us early on this conversation, but perhaps we can just sort of get into this topic. So we're talking the franchise prospect journey. Let's go to Susie and just if you could explain. Let's imagine you're new to franchising, or perhaps you're a prospective franchisee. What's your interpretation of what the franchise prospect journey is?
Okay, so yeah, I've been doing this now 26 years, not only for my own brands, but for lots of clients. So I would say the prospect journey has definitely changed and evolved over the years. And I think that both franchisor looking to recruit franchisees or a franchisee looking to join a brand need to be aware of what the journey looks like now. So I would say that generally prospects, when they contact a brand, are much better informed before they make that contact. So just by the nature of social media, digital, review sites, testimonials, case studies, people will look around, research around much more than they used to before they actually contact a brand. So everybody needs to be aware that there is an expectation from a franchisor that you have done your research, but the franchisor should be aware that a lot of prospects now have done a lot of research before they've made that connection with them. And it's being very aware that franchisors need to get their shop window in order. So their shop window being their website, their social media, all the customer review sites and rating sites and case studies, everything needs to be consistent and saying the same message, so that the prospect gets the right information and it's very transparent. And then I think one of the main points I would say about the prospect journey nowadays is transparency is absolutely key. Gone are the days where you hide information and people need to tease it out of you. It's well known in our industry now that transparency and building a compelling and transparent recruitment process is actually key to recruiting the right type of franchisee. So that process, it's about being, articulating your expectations to the prospects. What are you looking for in terms of skill set, personalities, hours that they're going to be working, being transparent about the investment levels. Don't hide the figures. It's about being transparent about the back office, the support they're going to get, the training, the ongoing support. And really just making it clear what a day in the life of being a franchisee is actually like. If you're a home care business and it's a 365 day a year business, 24/7, then say that, because people need to know what they're signing up to. So these are some of the key sort of trends in the actual prospect journey, I would say. The actual journey itself is quite a detailed process, which I'm happy to go into as well shortly.
I love that. I mean, I always start off these shows with nothing written down on a piece of paper, which terrifies lots of people. But you know what? I always end up with a huge amount written down. And Susie, what you've just said there, I mean, you've said so many things that are so valid as the principles of what this journey can look like. I think the fact that people are better informed because of all of the things that they can go to and look at, including this sort of thing, but because people are better informed, that means that franchisors have to up their game to make sure that, that they're supplying things that align with what a franchisee believes that journey should look like. And as much as I completely agree, it's going to be different for different companies. Transparency. What a word. And I think that's a word that any franchisor should take away from this conversation, because being transparent, having somebody understand what it is that you are offering and how and if you can be aligned is absolutely vital. Before we introduce a few people, and we've got a great question coming up from Simon. Neil, let's go to you on this. Susie said some really interesting things there, and a lot of that is about how we are getting information across to a franchisor, or as a franchisor, how we're trying to frame the information coming to us. In your experience, putting together the platform, what sort of ways have you found getting that information in easier? I know there are different sort of routes you can take.
Thanks, Harvey. I suppose there's two aspects of that. Well, one or three aspects. One is not a huge amount of franchising experience, so being completely upfront about that. But looking at how the same sort of rules apply when you're just doing recruitment for individuals. Transparency is obviously a key word. I mean, it's great to hear from Susie that these franchisees are doing the groundwork, so they know what they're going to get involved in. Which means when they come to the franchisor, they're better informed, which means hopefully you'll get better quality leads. But what we're trying to do with the Gather platform is to help those franchisees, well, actually help franchisees and franchisors by enabling the franchisees to be able to answer something very quick, conveniently and easily, not some entrenched 2-hour epic that turns them off and you've lost that potential franchisee. But just to understand, do they have the right budget? Is their expectations correct? You could ask the question, oh, have you, what is your budget limit? 20,000, 50,000, whatever it might be. And if it's not within your taking for that amount, i.e. you want 50,000, they're clicking the 20,000, well, then you can steer them either to more questions about that. Would they seek other financial assistance? Yes, no. But if they don't have that appetite, you can wheedle those people out, or those franchises out, at the beginning, which is kind of doing them a favor and you a favor, and reducing, as I said in my comments on your LinkedIn page. It's what we're trying to do, is we're trying to help reduce some of the legwork through automation, through better business processes. So by simplifying things and making it easier, you can get a more qualified leads coming in, because they've gone through the initial, and I say initial because obviously you do need to have contact with them, which I'm sure Susie's going to come to later on in the conversation. But yes, it's to make sure that the people coming to you for the conversation, don't have an expectation that, oh, I want to be ready next month for my franchise. That's not possible. That's never going to happen. So it's sort of getting those common sense questions filtered out the way first, so that what you're left with is something you can actually work with, and you're not wasting their time or your time.
Absolutely. Before we get further into today's chat, I want to say hello to a few people who have joined us here, because this is all about recognizing our wonderful community of people. So we have the lovely Omar, and he's put, good day all, nice to watch your show. Well, it's always good to have you with us, Omar. Omar hosts a wonderful show on LinkedIn called Zoom Party, and something else that I've been on. Do we really know them? I've actually been on that show, so check out Omar. We have the fantastic Simon Wise with us, and he's put, hello, franchise friends. Always great to have Simon with us. And in fact, Simon's put up a great question, in fact, two that we are going to get to. We have Katrina Newman with us. Always lovely to have Katrina with us. Katrina's put, hello, Harvey, Susie, and Neil. Well, hello to you too. Let's go to Simon's first comment and question, and then we'll go on to one from Tim. So Simon's put, the prospect journey can certainly be a long one for some, waiting for that window of opportunity, the alignment of the planets, when they are looking for, often overlooked by franchisors, I believe. Yeah, Susie, I'm going to go to you for this one, because I think it sometimes can be a difficult one, particularly when you've got property involved. I know that, trying to balance up finding a property at the same time as finding a potential franchisee can be really tricky, can't it?
Yeah.
Making this one.
Yeah, I mean, finding properties is it used to be, it was hard to find franchisees. Now it's hard to find franchisees and properties. You can have the best franchisees in the world, but nowhere to trade from. So we do see franchisors working a lot harder and more proactively to find properties and help shorten that recruitment process. But actually, what you're saying there, Simon, is true. Like that process can be quite lengthy, not just because of things like properties, but we work with a large global burger brand, for example, that have like a 14-stage recruitment process, and that recruitment process can take a year to go through. I'm not talking about the one with the golden arches. This is another global burger brand. And
it's okay.
So they are very rigorous. They have a 14-step roadmap where prospects, no matter how big a multi-unit franchisee you are, they don't care how much money you've got, they recruit on culture and values first, all the way through that recruitment process. It's fascinating. It's a mega brand with thousands of franchisees, and they still stay true to their values and core. And going through that 14-step process, as I say, can take a year. And you're meeting with heads of departments of different divisions. You're meeting with franchisees. You are really being stress tested throughout that process. As I say, these are normally established operators who are buying into this particular brand, and they are really being put to the test. So one of the things I would say from that process is it's really robust. And I would always say, don't underestimate the power of stress testing a candidate, no matter what their credentials are. Don't be scared to push the buttons on proof of funds, on the team structure, the time they're going to dedicate to the business, the people they're going to put in place to make sure that business is run properly on a daily basis. that they're going to spend some time in the field, that they're going to take time to speak to franchisees, that they're going to take the time to prepare a proper business plan with all the financials. So you know, that can take a year and a 14-step process. But then similarly, we've got clients that can convert within 3 to 6 months. And there are brands that I've heard of that are still recruiting, not meeting a candidate face to face, which still blows my mind, but you know, works for some. They tend to be smaller investment franchises. So it's a fascinating process, but I always say don't be scared to highlight how long it takes to go through that process to your candidates and prospects, but also make it very clear in your literature, your websites, your conversations, that it is an X-step process, even if it's a 3-step process, and always directing people to what the next step is after they've satisfied that first step, what's next and what they need to do there, and then what's next. It's quite powerful when you document it like that.
Absolutely, especially, I mean, again, every time you talk, you make some fantastic points, Susie. You know, I always love having you on this show. And, you know, I sit there nodding and writing it down because you really do make a huge amount of sense. You know, when you're talking about a process that's that long, you know, 14 steps, it's incredible. It's also incredible that culture and values remain at the heart of even a process like that.
Yeah.
And if you're a franchisor that's relatively new, or if you're a franchisee, you know, or whoever you are in this process, aligning your values and making sure you go through, if you're being stress tested, which you said there, embrace it, because you're being stress tested for a reason, to make sure that you're going to be right for this business and the business is going to be right for you. So take the stress testing and stress test the franchisor as well is perhaps the way to go, you know?
Yeah, we do see that. And that should be the process. It's a two-way street, like everything in franchising, you know?
Yeah, you can understand. You want to get all these things out aired first, don't you, up front, not a year down the road when it's starting to break.
Yes, exactly. That's where the problems come in, when there's miscommunications, when there isn't transparency, you know. And if you can get that information out there, and the information is aligned to who you are as a business, and it's transparent and it's clear and it lays out the process, and you really understand the individuals concerned, then that's how we can get people aligned. That's how we can get better franchising done. So it's some fantastic advice for franchisors listening. Great question as well, Simon. Thanks for that. Let's have a look. We have a question now coming up from Tim. We've got another one from Simon. We've got a great comment coming up from Penny. And we've got a few other people here. Let's, in fact, before we get to the next question, let's recognize the fact that we do have the wonderful Penny Hopkinson here. Penny is a supporter of our show. And Penny, I'm sorry, I forgot your book. But look, we are really modern here on the Franchise Show. So Penny, even though I haven't got your book here, I am going to put up that on the screen right now. And Penny's put, hello, Harvey, Susie and Neil, great to be amongst franchising friends. Well, it's always fantastic to have you here, Penny. Looking forward to getting into your question later on. Before we do, I want to recognize the fact that we have the fantastic Leslie Flowers with us. Leslie does an amazing LinkedIn Live called Think and Grow Rich. Helped me a huge amount. It's on a Friday, so do check that one out. We have Rick here as well. Great to have you with us. Rick was a former guest. Rick's put good morning, stop by to say hi. Well, hi to you too, Rick. Always great to have you with us. Tim it's always good to have Tim with us. Tim, again, a supporter of our show. All these lovely friends that are supporters of the show. Tim has put, hello everyone, great to be here. I hope you all had a good long weekend. Well, I can speak for me that I had a lovely long weekend because it was my birthday. So that was very good. And Tim is, of course, with the bridge. So it's fantastic for you to be supporting us and us to be supporting you. So let's get into this and let's go to a question from Tim. Let's have a look at what Tim's got to say. So Tim has put, I have literally just finished recording a FranChat podcast episode talking about helping franchisees truly understand how their journey is going to look, how they are going to be supported, and what growth expectations are. They are, and I'm going to have to go onto this bit, they are absolutely fully informed. Yeah, absolutely. What do you make of this one, Susie? Again, it's about getting this across to that franchisee, what this journey is going to look like.
Yeah, I think, a lot of it is the roadmap that I said, being transparent about the steps that go into that and making sure in the content of the recruitment roadmap, as I call it, that all the key questions that you normally get asked are addressed. So, one of the classics, and I'm sure you'll all be laughing when I say this, is when you speak to somebody for the first time, they want to know how much is the franchise, how they're going to make, and how you're going to help them do that. So these are normally three things that I address head on, straight early on, and say, well, in terms of the investment, it's not just the franchise fee, it's the working capital, any setup cost, stock, equipment, premises, vehicles, whatever, and your launch marketing budget. And do you know what? You also need your working capital for the first 12 months of trading. So that's the answer to that. And then, how much am I going to make? Well, that's a classic, which we all know in franchising. Firstly, you never say how much you're going to make, but actually, it's putting it back on the prospect straight away and say, well, look, it's getting those alignment of expectations. How much do you need to make? And do you think you can make that through this business model? And actually, if you think you're going to make that in the first year, it's going to be probably 3 years down the line till you get that potential return, those types of things. And then in terms of how are you going to help me do it, it's reminding people very early on in that recruitment process that they're not buying a job and they're not an employee. So you want them to get into that mindset of your business. It's in your control with our support, and here's the areas we can support you. So I think that's crucial, getting that in and setting those expectations in the early stages, definitely. And then if you can involve a franchisee or two in your recruitment process, so they can really see what it's like to be a day in the life of a franchisee. I think that's really that's good to get that in early on, so they can see, what it's going to be like.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. Again, it makes me smile. I can hear a little bit of interference. Can anyone else hear that?
Yeah.
Let me just, it's live, you see, so this is fun. We can do that. Can we still hear it now? If you could.
No.
Okay, so I think it could be Neil.
Yes.
You may have some interference. Have you got anything else going on there at the moment?
It's deathly silent here.
Okay. All right. Well, it seems all right.
I'm listening intently to Susie, really.
Yeah, me too. I mean, I was just going to say, because it made me smile. Obviously, I'm involved in the industry. People know what I do, but those three primary questions, they're absolutely what you get asked. But there's such a huge amount else that needs to go into that journey. But I like what you said there. I like approaching those questions head on, straight away, get it right out of the way, because then people know what that is, and then they want to know the more detailed bits. If you kind of I mean, it's a classic sales thing, I suppose, in a way. I was once told when I was in sales when we did a quote, to put the price in big letters on the front cover. And it always made me smile, but it sort of worked, because we all know when we get a quote for something, we go right to the last page and look how much it is, right? Then we go back to get it out of the way. And these are key questions, whether they get asked all the time and how they're answered are key to this journey. Really important. Love that.
Yeah.
Let's Susie in a question, Harvey. just off the back of that, I'd just be interested to understand and know. I love the fact, yes, I completely agree. You've got to be upfront, or else what's the point? Because you're only going to shock them down the road when they find out, oh my God, I didn't expect this. But what is your experience by the prospective franchisee, when you fully did? Because obviously, let's say arbitrary figures. Let's say it's a £20,000 investment, and then you've just said all those things that they're working capital, all these other bits. Are they like jaw dropped and it's right? I know this isn't for me, or do you still get? Is there a percentage on your experience that come along after that, after being dazzled by all
Well,
those figures?
yeah, I'll let Susie take this one because you're only allowed to ask me a question at the end of this. Okay.
Yeah,
I will
well,
give
actually,
you a view on it, but I love to hear Susie's view on these things. I mean, if my view on it is, it depends on the situation. It depends on the person. That can be certainly part of that initial questioning. And some people, their jaw will drop, and that may well be because their expectations are different. But that's part of that journey. That's part of discovering whether this opportunity is right for them, because the finance part of it is very key. They've got to know what it is that they're looking to invest here and when they might get it back.
yeah, I think go for
I
it.
was just going to say, on a psychological perspective, do you handhold them through that process, or is it a case you're up front, there's the numbers, if you can't do it, then don't join?
Yeah.
Or is it you do have to walk them through to give them some reassurance, or it obviously might depend from situation to situation, I suppose.
Yeah, do you know, you always get the tire kickers who want the world, but they've got £5,000 in their pocket. And if they're looking to buy into a food franchise that's a
Yep.
minimum sort of 400 odd, 1,000 plus, then you've got to kick that to the curb pretty early. And £5,000 is not going to get them very much. However, talking about culture and attitude and values, sometimes your best franchisees tick all the boxes with culture and values and, vision, buying into your vision for your company, and they don't have the cash. But actually, it's recognizing that if people have those traits, how you can potentially help them and signpost them to all the places like the banks, the alternative finance companies. We see a lot of the younger generation coming into franchising, and sometimes they can get the Prince's Trust, now the King's Trust grants and things like that. So it's trying to establish those that are absolute tire kickers versus those that could potentially, they tick all the boxes and could potentially raise funds through other sources, which includes family money and things like that as well. We see that a lot, and even at the franchise show last week, we had clients exhibiting, and one of our clients told a great story of a group of 4 young guys came up to the stand and said they all have £5,000 each. Could it buy this food franchise? Which obviously it couldn't, but also, if 4 people buying into a franchise, one franchise, they're probably not going to get the level of return that's going to make it worthwhile for them. So it's having those honest conversations as well.
Yeah. Yeah, makes complete sense.
I
Interesting.
love that. I think that's really interesting as well. Particularly what I liked what you were saying, because I'm a huge advocate of trying to get younger people into franchising, becoming a passion of mine. And we're going to be doing all sorts of things to help young people get into franchising. But when you said their values are more important than the cash, sometimes, okay, there's some extreme versions. But if someone, I'm going to go back to your 14-step process for the fast food chain there. If someone is ticking the boxes there, and they were 80% there on the capital that's needed, there are various ways to raise capital. If you've got all the right team, you've got the right values, you can put the time into it, but you're a little bit short, then an investor's going to come in, look at that situation for that, in that case, multi-unit, high value investment, and look at the potential return. I just think it's really interesting for us as franchisors to go value first, to be value centric, because
You was making the same notes, Harvey. Yeah, and I put establish their soft skills is what I've written.
Yeah.
Absolutely,
Yeah,
absolutely.
you know, with my background in recruitment agencies, I always had this thing about it's about sector fit, brand fit, and boss fit. So the candidate has got to be able to show you that they connect with the sector, and that they've got to then show you that they empathise with the brand and connect with the brand. And then they've got to show you that they can work with you as individuals. And, you know, that's what we always did in our recruitment days. And it's still the same in franchise recruitment. Those are three key things to make sure there's a meeting of the minds very early on in that recruitment process and that roadmap.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Question, Harvey, for Susie.
We've got a question for you coming up, actually, from Simon Wise. So,
Okay, good.
when you ask Susie another one, you're going to get a question, Neil.
It's only a quick one. I was only going to ask. I know it's specifically in franchise. Some franchisers do not want people from their industry because they want them sort of, you know, fresh without any history. Is they're true the opposite, where they do want people with their skills from that industry. So it's not just that they want vanilla people; they also want people with experience.
Yeah. Yeah, you see it both ways. You definitely do.
Right.
You know, you've got some that are absolutely categorically saying we are not going to be untraining your bad habits before we train you in our habits. And then you've got others that say you actually absolutely must have a minimum level qualification of this or experience in the sector with this. So it really does depend.
Sure. Thank you.
Yeah,
Sorry about that.
You're allowed to. You're allowed to. You can ask anything you want. That's the fun. Anyway, look, so Simon's put, Neil, Gather plays an important part in the prospect process and journey. You bring the franchisee validation to life with real-time feedback from existing franchisees, vitally important for any prospect on their journey. Look, you're going to be quoting this one, Neil.
Oh, I really am. I'd like to thank Simon Wise for that quote. That was fantastic.
It's absolutely true. I mean, you know, Susie, we've touched on trying to get some of the sort of the basic stuff right when we're talking to our franchisees. You know, when we're filtering down, I mean, there was a recent BFA survey that said that I don't like the word conversion rate really, but you know, the success rate, let's call it that, between someone making an inquiry and someone becoming a franchisee was somewhere around 1.4%, 1.7%. So you're going to be looking at trying to filter down 100 potential people to 2 people that are going to be ideal for your business, that are going to be aligned, that are going to be the right individuals. And so there's a lot of conversations that you might end up having, a lot of time that you're going to be putting in to perhaps the wrong people. So I think it's really important to use platforms like yours, Nils, and other ways at the beginning to try and filter down to then who you're going to have those more in-depth conversations that Susie was talking about. And what do you make of what Simon said there?
Is that to me? Just to check,
Yeah,
Harvey.
it is, yes.
Again, thank you, Simon. That was fantastic. Yeah, I mean, that's the point. What we're trying to do is give people time back so they can put quality time in where it's deserved, i.e., on the individuals that have, and not the tire kickers, as Susie rightly said, so that you can actually focus again the quality time on the individual that actually need it. So you can ascertain face to face, or you know, person in person, whatever it is, that these are the individuals you want as representing your brand or not, because it's going to take that next level or several levels, 14-step program, to establish, you know, whether this franchisee is who they say they are for a start, and whether they do have the qualities that you need from them to represent your brand.
Absolutely, absolutely. Let's have a look. We've got a question coming up here from Penny, and another good one coming up from Simon. Before we do that, just want to recognise the fact that we have somebody new here. We've got Kind, I think that's pronounced there. Hello, Harvey, Susie, Neil, and everyone on here. Well, great to have you with us. Fantastic. Please get involved in the question. Pop in a question or a comment about today's topic, it would be fantastic to have your involvement, and welcome to the show. We have another one here from Rick, and he's put egg-cited. He is from Eggbret, by the way. I love a pun, so I'm gonna allow that one in. We have a LinkedIn user. Please let us know who you are. Hello, franchise friends. Always great to have somebody new here. So let's have a look at what Penny's got to say. We were talking about young people as well here. So Penny's put, say a young prospect wants to see a copy of the operations manual and how it demonstrates the depth of support they receive. It's an 800-page, dull, heavy text tome, I think that was, but far from appealing, let alone engaging. How can a franchisor persuade an exceptional candidate that their understanding and learning style or ability for being successful in onboarding? I think this is a really interesting one, because I think, you know, let's take this back to the prospect journey here, and the fact that you're going to get different people of different ages, different backgrounds involved in that journey. You know, how do we make it engaging for a prospect? Let's say someone's straight out of university, managed to get the money together to invest in a franchise. You know, let's say that they align culturally and they've ticked a few of these boxes. But, you know, as we take them along, how can we make that exciting and interesting for a younger generation of franchisees, Susie?
Yeah, so it's a great question, Penny, and hi, not seen you for a while. So in terms of, firstly, the ops manual, just in terms of that, nowadays we tend to see the ops manual being more of an ops platform, where it's not text heavy and it's not this Bible that sits in a branch or whatever. So most of our clients now will structure the content into either online folders that are much more interactive, like videos, or, you know, a mix of video and text and whatever, or these interactive learning platforms, and a lot more video led and things like that. So we see a lot of that now, which really does address the different ways that people learn, and also not just how the franchisee will learn, but actually the staff that work for them, depending on the sector, and, you know, the different age groups. They can be, you know, youngsters that are frontline in a food operations, or they can be, you know, more experienced professionals in a management franchise that, you know, will learn in a different way potentially as well. So that's the ops manual. But in terms of the actual franchise prospect journey, it is about making it fun, engaging, and, you know, keeping it live and kicking. So the more you can interact with testimonials, videos, face-to-face in the field, you know, meeting actual franchisees, going out and doing a day in the life of a franchisee and bringing it to life, that is how you're going to get the excitement and engagement around the brands, I would say, definitely.
Absolutely. I completely agree. I mean, while we're on that, I know Penny is going to absolutely agree with you as well. You know, Penny is all about turning an ops manual into a knowledge sharing platform, making it engaging, making it exciting. And in fact, next week, Penny is going to be our guest on this show. And we are going to be talking about how to create a knowledge sharing environment in our franchise businesses. So do join us next week, when we're definitely going to be getting more into that. Let's have another look at some questions that have come in. We've got a good one that's coming up from Simon Wise. If you have just joined us today, this is the Franchise Show, and today we are talking about the franchise prospect journey. And it's been a great conversation so far. If you have just joined us, please pop in a question, pop in a comment, or just say hello. Let's have a look at this one from Simon. Simon's put, how useful is the discovery day in the prospect journey? How has the discovery day evolved over the years? This is a great question. I mean, I speak to lots of franchisors, and the discovery day is normally still part of this, but I'd really like to have your take, Susie, on how the discovery day has evolved. Does it still have relevance in a sort of a modern franchise prospect journey?
Yeah, so it's another great question, Simon. Thank you. So, yeah, I think discovery days have definitely evolved. Again, different companies will do it differently. But it used to be a case of you turn up to a formal discovery day. There's a presentation on ops, finance, marketing, financial modelling and territories and all that kind of thing. Quite a lot of our clients now have moved that is like a first meeting, and that is where they will do a run through of certain things. But actually, depending on the size of the client, it can be a series of meetings in a discovery session. So again, for the larger clients, the prospects will have a discovery meeting with the marketing team. They'll have a discovery meeting with the ops team, with the compliance team, with the finance team. Others, it's the smaller businesses. That discovery session is with the founder still, because they're maybe just starting out, or they're still signing off everybody, and they tend to be more like a formal discovery day. But then with the rise of Zoom, Teams, all of that kind of thing, I personally see more people adding more regular meetings and validation sort of calls into that discovery process to run through certain things in more detail and get to know the prospect a bit better. So again, it will vary, I would say. I think some people used to go and visit people in their houses. Some people still do that, whereas others, it's not about that. It's about more show me the structure, the finance, the how you're going to support this behind the scenes, rather than actually going to somebody's house and seeing what where they live, kind of thing. So I think it's very much evolved and developed over the years, and I would say when it comes to the recruitment process, the discovery day process is massively important, because it makes sure that everybody goes through the same process and that it's consistent. We have worked with lots of clients, some big brands, home services brands and things like that, who are getting a high volume of leads coming through, and actually they're not giving all the prospects a consistent recruitment experience. And actually, by putting formalized discovery days or discovery day process in place, and this recruitment roadmap, whether it's 5-step or 14 steps, by having that in place and asking everybody to go through the same process, it's a much more fair and consistent process as well. And you'll find that the results are potentially higher at the end of it as well. We worked with a large gym franchise a few years ago, 300 leads a month in the heydays of portals really throwing leads at you in a great fashion. And actually, those 300 leads were not going through a consistent recruitment process. They'd be speaking to different people depending on who had time to speak to them. And in terms of going through the various hoops, some would go through some hoops, some would go through other hoops, some would go through very little hoops. So actually, by putting a standardized process, which includes that discovery day or discovery sessions, they found that actually those 300, they could whittle down to 30 good ones quite quickly early on in the process. And actually, by doing that, believe it or not, the conversion rates were much higher. So it's quite interesting.
Absolutely. What I like about that is the fact that you referred to it as a discovery process.
Yeah.
And I think that that's a phrase that, as franchisors, we should think about a little bit more, rather than discovery day.
Yeah.
Because it's always referred to, or I've always heard it referred to, as a discovery day. But you're absolutely right. Whether that's experiencing the day in the life of, whether that's a day going through, marketing or finance, the consistency of having that, and the fact that it's part of this roadmap, that's the same for everyone, is really important. We've only got a couple of minutes left today, actually. Time is flying by. Before we get...
I just asked something off the back of that last conversation, because again, I'm new to the franchise world. So I didn't know that was the terminology for a discovery day. Do they have a thing like an open day, and a virtual open day, they advertise online that they're going to have an open day session, anybody can turn up and find out. But do they do? And is it an open day? Is that the term you use, or?
Yeah, so it's like a discovery day, Neil. But what again, different schools of thoughts. I normally like to know who I'm speaking to when I bring them into the discovery process. So they've gone through some level of qualification, whether that's an NDA or an application form or a couple of initial calls, rather than invite blanket effect. You don't know who's coming in and who you're telling them. In a discovery day, you tend to impart quite a lot of detailed information about your system. So yeah, you want to know who you're speaking to and that you've got a level of protection through an NDA there.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
Thanks, Harvey. Thanks, Susie.
No worries. Let's quickly say hello to a couple of people who have joined on later on in our conversation. We've got the fantastic Andy Henderson. Great to have you with us, Andy. And we have the lovely Nick Plevin as well. So sorry I'm late, very late. I got stuck in a traffic jam. Well, no problem. And you can always catch these episodes afterwards. We put plenty of the links to these episodes out afterwards, and you can go and watch them then at your leisure. Well, look, it's been a fantastic conversation today. I think we could probably do this conversation about 4 or 5 times. So hopefully Susie can come back. And actually, Susie has come back. This is her second appearance on the show. And at least this time so far, the internet has not cut out. So you haven't been on your own this time.
Yeah.
But look, we have come to a new part of the show. And this is a part of the show where for a moment, my camera will go off. And this is not because things have broken my end. This is because it's now technically illegal to see me without a hat. But I now, as you can see, have a beautiful hat on. And this is the part of the show where we get under the hat of the guest. So we've talked about franchising, and this part of the show is in fact sponsored by PJ Murphy and Son, bespoke British hatters. And this is the lovely Paul Murphy, who a lot of people know, but a lot of people don't know. He's also a hatter, and he made me this beauty. So please reach out to Paul if you'd like a hat like mine. Anyway, so this is the part of the show where a couple of things happen. We're going to ask Susie, because Neil's had a turn at this. We're going to ask Susie something that we don't know about Susie, or a claim to fame, Susie. What is your claim to fame? Let's go for that one.
That is a really good one. Apart from my ability to drink fizz on a regular basis, I put that down to being a Scottish thing, actually. It's in the blood. My claim to fame is I'm actually quite good at table tennis. Not a lot of people know that. So that's something my grandfather got me into very young. And actually, once I've had a few, I'm quite good on the ping pong table.
Fantastic. Well, we'll have to have a ping pong match. I'm not, so I imagine you would beat me very easily. Now, this is also the part of the show. Neil and Susie, you've been fantastic today, and you've answered all these lovely questions. And this, coupled with our fantastic community that are with us, are what makes this show. But you got to answer the questions, and I asked you a lot. So you can get your own back on me if you wish, and you don't have to, but you can ask me anything you like to get your own.
I've got 2 for you, and it's payback for the last time I was on where you disappeared, and I was like keeping the podcast going. He was on holiday, for anybody listening, and I'm sure he was sat there with his Speedos on under the table there.
Yeah, I'm just at the bar.
So I could ask you to prove you're not wearing Speedos right now, but I won't. The other thing I was going to say is you are like such a chilled person, Harvey. You're always very calm and collected. What are the things that really push your buttons?
It's a great question, actually, because I think anyone who knows me knows that I perhaps don't get annoyed that often, but I will occasionally. And I think if I see somebody who is, I think bullying is definitely something that pushes my button. If I see somebody that clearly is being picked on, or if I see somebody who's in trouble and it seems off balance, I'd always step in on that. Yeah. I try and be as chilled out as I can, even when things go wrong. But it's a great question. Thank you. Well, we have come to the end of today's episode. So I would like to, first of all, thank everyone who has been with us live today, everyone who's going to watch this in the future, because you are the producers and the directors of this show. We genuinely don't know what is going to happen on these things, and it's the questions that come in that drive our conversation. So you are a huge part of what we do here and what makes this special. I'd also like to thank our wonderful guests today, the fantastic Susie McCafferty and the wonderful Neil Newman. Thank you both for your fantastic input into the show today.
Thank you, Harvey. Thank you, Susie. You've really educated me, and thank you, Simon Weiss.
Oh, thank you. Good to see all our franchising friends on today as well. That's great.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Have a good evening, everyone.
No,
day,
that's it.
depending on where you are.
Fantastic. Before we finally finish up today, it leaves me just with telling you what's going to be happening next week on the franchise show. So that is what is the date today? The 22nd. So that'd be the 29th, I believe. Anyway, next Tuesday. It's always a Tuesday, 5:15 GMT, 12:15 EST. We are going to be speaking with the lovely Penny Hopkinson, and we're going to be talking about how to create a knowledge sharing environment in our franchise network. So please join us for that one. And until next time, take very good care. Cheers.